Jan's opening clinic number 23. I have to start this show with a big and sincere apology since it took forever to record this episode that I'm doing right now, and I'm aware that people have been long waiting for answers to their questions. My list of excuses includes studio occupation, Thailand. I think that's a list of excuses. So I am sorry, I did not intend it to be that long until I get back to opening clinic. And I hope that my very deep answers will make up for it. Since it's been a while, we will wrap up all the questions that I have left from the last article in today's show. Therefore, it could take a while. I'm assuming we'll be here for around 2 hours, but it could be more. We'll see how long I need to go through all the questions. So the format is still the same. There was an article where Chess24 premium users could ask me opening questions, and I will answer them in this very show. Let's get right into it. Question number 1 is by Johan Wilhelm Möbius. He's saying, "Hi Jan, I watched Laurent's Berlin series, but I want to play with white against it, and it shows a black repertoire. I know, sorry about that. So I have to choose between the endgame, 5 rook e1 and 4 d3. Can you please describe the character of the 3 lines to help me to decide which one fits better to my style? What do you recommend? Which playing style fits to which of the 3 main lines?" First of all, I'm sure that Laurent did a much better job than me explaining what belongs to what and what fits to what and what style of play is required, even though, as Jan Wilhelm Möbius mentioned, in the Black series, of course, you are more focused on explaining the dangers from the black side than from the white side. It is pretty much a matter of taste and a matter of how much time you wanna invest. So the 3 main lines, as Johan Wilhelm Möbius mentioned, are after castles knight takes e4, the move rook to e1, and the move d4. And the alternative is, instead of castling, to play the move 4 d3. Now, the simplest line to play is castles knight takes e4, rook e1. This is one that you can play without a whole lot of knowledge. It's currently quite popular at the highest levels again, even though that, I guess, ebbs and flows. Basically leads to a simplified position after the main move, bishop f1 here, where the pawn structure, as you can see, is currently symmetrical, and white tries to gain a tiny advantage due to the fact that this knight on d6 is misplaced. A competent black player will normally know his way around here, but that has not stopped white in the recent past from going for these lines, where they used to play a setup with d4, c3, bishop d3, this rook will go back to e1. And black typically maneuvers his knight somewhere to f5 or to e8 and goes d5 and tries to equalize that way. Those lines, if black knows what he's doing, have been proven to be relatively harmless from black's perspective. But the recent trend is to push this pawn to d5 in different lines. For example, here after knight to e8, I think people have started thinking about d5. Similarly, after bishop f6, rook e1, rook e8, d5 all of a sudden has become a move. All these things that used to not really be on the menu are becoming ideas. Therefore, if you go for this rook e1 line, if you want to play without a lot of work, you can always play wherever. Knight f5, c3, or rook e8, you can take and play c3 or play c3 immediately. Then get your pieces out and hope for a tiny advantage. Typically, black will be able to neutralize that. While if you want to book up, then you should look into all these d5 based lines, which make play a little more complex, make it somewhat tougher for black, but also give white the chance to be worse, which you never have if you just play c3 and then bring the pieces out. So that's rook e1, which, as mentioned, is the line that requires the least work, but it is also fairly drawish. The other one is this endgame. There are some sidelines, but the endgame is the critical test, which you should play if you like endgames, and if you believe in White's cause here. White does have the 4 versus 3 majority on the king side, while the black majority on the queen side is crippled due to the double pawn. Therefore, there is a world where White can push these pawns up the board, and black will not be able to withstand that. Now, practically, the problem is, first of all, that black has been doing okay here. Like if you look at correspondence games, I think pretty much every single game from this position ends in a draw. So the black position is objectively sound. And there is the issue that black has like 15 different plans here, which you sort of have to be ready for. Black can play h6, he can play bishop d7, he can play king e8, he can play with knight to e7, he can play with bishop e7 followed by knight h4, and so on and so forth. Therefore, yeah, this endgame either requires a lot of study or just a good feel for complicated. I'm not even sure if I should call it an endgame. Queenless middle games. And the more experience you get playing these positions and looking at them, the better. At the highest level recently, this has become a very deep theory debate in many of these lines, which they have been playing non-stop. Just look at some MVL versus Nakamura games. We're normally around move 24, 25. They try some fresh idea, and sometimes MVL manages to put some pressure, but overall, black has been holding himself here. So go for this if you do enjoy studying endgames, if you do believe that white has chances here just by looking at the position. Yeah. Then the last is the move 4d3. 4d3 in itself I wouldn't call a system yet. Black plays bishop to c5, that's by far the main and best move. And now white has a chance to determine the nature of the play with his next move. You can play bishop takes c6. When after d takes c, you get a maneuvering game where black has the bishops, but you get the structure that's very similar to lines in the Rossolimo as well, that nowadays we see a lot. Black has the 2 bishops for now, but he does have the double c-pawns, and it leads to a strategic game where both sides have quite a few plans. White can play with bishop e3, he can play without bishop e3, he can try bishop g5 at any given moment, he can go for long castles, he can go for short castles, he can go for knight b2, knight c4, he can fianchetto this bishop, he can delay castles and start with h3, and so on and so forth. For black, it's similar. There are many plans. The most typical one is this knight transfer to e6 or c6. There are decisions if you want to give up this bishop or retreat it to d6, if you want to go bishop g4 and give up this bishop or put it on e6. So both sides have a myriad of plans, and if you study top-level games, you will find many examples for any plan in this position. This one, yeah, I don't know. If you like static advantages, it's a line worth going for. The other one is the move c3 here, or castles is a close cousin to c3, when the play often becomes a little slower. White wants to treat it like an Italian, go castles, knight b2, play d4 at the right moment. While black, first of all, has a choice already here. If he wants to play with d5, after which play can become very direct and theoretical, or if he wants to play one of the slower plans with castles, d6, then knight e7, knight g6, or I think Laurent gives some plan with d6, a6. So this leads more to an Italian style game, and you should play it if you're used to such structures with white, and if you feel that you can outplay your opponent without having things be too theoretical, while the plus is that these positions are a lot less dry than the Rook e1 position. So this is normally sort of a better one wins type of game, where there's plenty potential to outplay your opponent, but it's also hard, as anywhere in the Berlin, that's why it's so popular, to claim an opening advantage. So those are the options. I do not have a clear recommendation. Based on my chicken style, I would probably currently favor going for Rook e1. But then again, if I faced a weaker opponent and felt it's a must-win situation, or it's a should-win situation, let's say, this Rook e1, I might feel it's too drawish, and I might go for 4d3, just keeping more play in the position, and after bishop c5, decide between bishop takes c6 or c3. Yeah, it's nothing easy in the Berlin, which is a big reason why the Italian has become so popular again. But yeah, that's the choice you're facing, Johan Wilhelm Möbius. Hope that helped. Best of luck fighting the Berlin. Do we have more questions? Slavo F is saying, hello Jan, thanks for all great content here at chess24.com. Thank you. My question, what is current state of theory in classical Slav? d4, d5, c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, dc4. Recently I did not see many games at top level. Is this just a matter of fashion or are there some problems for black? Thanks. Bit of column A, bit of column B, I would say, but yeah, let's look at the good old Slav. First of all, it's still a mainstream opening, and I do not think it's bad by any stretch. Of course, white is not forced to go for this position. Once they get here, more often than not, people play a4. We've recently seen Magnus win a game with e4, b5, bishop e2, some sort of gambit. But I don't think that's black's main worry, even though it's another thing to add on the to-do list from the black side, because these lines really did not exist like 5 years ago, and now they're becoming more and more popular. But the main line is still the move a4, and here black already faces a choice. The classical move is bishop to f5, and there is the move e6, which I've played quite a bit, which I still think is a very decent line, and I have not seen it get into too much trouble recently, theoretically. So a4, e6 I think is in decent shape, and it does still pop up at all kinds of levels, quite regularly. The point is after e3, which is the main move, you get some sort of IQP position, isolate queen's pawn, cdd, bishop e7, short castles. It has its own body of theory nowadays, but as far as I know, black is still doing alright here. So no particular reason not to go here. There's also the sharper line with e4, bishop to b4, which, once again, as far as I know, is also in decent shape. So dc a4, e6, it was never quite as popular as bishop f5, but I feel that move is on the rise. And bishop f5, also nothing particularly wrong with it. I believe black players have shied away from it a bit, mainly because of the knight e5 lines. I could be wrong about this, but that's my feeling. e6 used to be a line, f3, bishop b4. In this position, I famously mixed up the move order with king f2 and was lost after bishop c2, which was unpleasant. I do think that the theoretical problem here is knight takes c4, short castles, and this weird move king to f2, preparing e4. e4 used to be the main line, but after bishop e4, oh no, sorry, I'm mixing up everything. Here knight e4 works. I mean, e4 here used to be the main line, but after bishop e4, f e4, knight e4, bishop d2, I believe black is holding his terrain, but this knight takes c4, king f2 line is a bit of an issue. Therefore, black players have started playing knight bd7 here, and after knight takes c4, the one line that still has a decent standing, that I never really liked, but that very much is still alive, is the move knight to b6 here. When white goes knight e5, black plays a5 to stop a5, and here white has tried all kinds of things, g3, f3, e3, bishop g5, you name them, but I could never find anything that seemed too devastating for black, and there's still a decent amount of Grandmaster lines in this position. It's a bit passive maybe for black, so it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it does strike me as still fairly playable. There's also the sharper line, knight takes c4, queen c7, which has sort of become very untrendy. I'm not 100% sure why. My best guess is that in this line, this is the old Morozevich line, where they used to play g5 here. And black was holding himself quite well for a while, but my guess is that they did not find complete equality in these... How does this go? Sorry if I'm rattling out the moves, but there's many Grandmaster games for all this stuff in these positions. Bishop d6, this used to be considered to be fine for black, but there was this game Krumnigiri, I believe, in a couple of years back, 2013, and since then the line has been somewhat less popular. There you go, king b8, castles, h5, h4. I've never checked this very deeply, but white is a pawn up, and it feels like black was maybe struggling a bit here to prove full compensation. So to sum things up, Slav is still going strong, but currently, you're right, it's less popular than the Grunfeld or knight f6, e6, followed by the Ragozin or the Catalan or the Nimzo. Of course, knight c3 is by no means forced. e3 has always been there, knight c3, e3, and so on and so forth. But in the main line after dc a4, my personal feeling is that e6 is still doing very much okay and could be on the rise, while bishop f5, knight e5, black is running a bit short on options, when currently the one that seems to still be doing alright is knight c7, knight d7 followed by knight b6. That's a little passive, and I wouldn't play with black, even though I could never really bust it. That's where I stand. Of course, there's also e3 and so on. I'm not quite sure what the latest developments have been here, but as far as I know, black is supposed to be alright here. So that's the good old Slav. I hope that helps, Slavof. Then we have Mr. Filomato. Filomato is saying, "Hi Jan, I was looking for an opening to mix it up against 1e5, 1e4 I guess, and try to play more aggressively in classical club level play. I play the Berlin against tough opposition and have this weird love relationship with the Alekhine as a blitz weapon, but in classical it's probably not recommended. I have the same actually, because I pre-move a lot of 1 knight f6 in blitz, but I've never been too convinced. It's the wisest choice to be made there. I'm not a Sicilian player, so what do you think about the Carlsen opening for g6 in Ruy Lopez? Do you have any other suggestion? Not sure. It's one of the eternal questions. How to mix it up by playing something somewhat surprising and dynamic, but not too risky against 1e4. I have never had a custom-made solution. I sometimes play the Caro-Kann if I'm in mix-it-up mode. But yeah, I agree that the Alekhine is a bit much in classical. Not that it's refuted, but whenever I play this in blitz, I get this position invariably, and I'm always slightly worse, so not a big fan. So the Carlsen line for g6, I think that's a decent line. I'm assuming you mean a6, bishop a4, g6. You could also start with g6 on move 3. There's some differences, but I'm assuming this is the one you mean. There's still a lot of room for how to interpret this line, but it is one of those sidelines that I've never played, but it's also usually on my to-do list that maybe as a surprise weapon it could be very well worth throwing in there. So yeah, I think this is a decent line. Once again, there is some debate to be had if one should start with 3g6 or go 4g6, because here maybe d4 is a move. But anyway, the main move is c3, and this is a bit of a crossroads where Carlsen typically plays with d6, d4, bishop d7, which is very playable. That's why he's doing it. It's not really my cup of tea because, once again, painting with a broad brush here, but I'm just not very comfortable in these structures with black after d5, knight c7. There's different ways to get this. c4, or probably we exchange bishops first and go c4. Carlsen and others have been showing ways for black to play these positions. I'm just not that comfortable with them because they resemble a King's Indian, so I wouldn't like them, but as mentioned, that's not saying they're bad. Also, what you have to be aware of is that white has like 15. 15 is strong, but 5 different moves here. Bishop e3 is a move, rook e1 is a move, d5 is a move, I think bishop b3 is a move, bishop g5 is a move. The list continues. So this is not such an easy position to play. The alternative that I have some sympathy for is the move bishop to g7 here immediately. The difference is now after d4 you don't play d6, I guess that runs into d5, but you give up the center, you go e d c d, b5, this bishop goes somewhere, typically b3, bishop c2 is also a move, and knight g7, and this is a much more double-edged position, which is riskier, of course, since we've given up the center, but I think it also offers black some chances for active play. Let's say castles, castles. Black typically wants to go d6 and then have a look around. If you want to go bishop g4 or or h6 g5 or king h8 f5. And yeah, I do think this is a playable line. As mentioned, it's a risky line. It would be on the risky end of spectrums of line I would play, since we have given up the center. But I do not think that it's ridiculous. So I believe as a way to spice it up, it's a very viable option. I understand. It's probably not what he meant by Carlsen line, because that's d6, bishop d7, which I also think is playable, but yeah, it's less attractive to me because you risk being stuck in that King's Indian type structure. So do I have any other suggestions? Not really. It's the eternal quest to find some way to mix it up that is still playable. I think this 3g6 or 4g6 is a very decent path to go down if you don't want to touch the Sicilian or the Caro-Kann. The Alecan, I agree, it's more of a blitz line. So, thank you for your question, Mr. Filomato. What do we have? Filomato also says, awesome, the new video series on the Berlin. Thanks for all the content. Yeah, thanks to Laurent Fraissinet who did that series. I'm being told it's very good. Then we have an international master, Carlos. He's saying, hello, Mr. Gustafsson. Hello, Mr. Carlos. My question is about the Ruy Lopez Briar, one specific line. I'll put it on the board in a second, but I'll read it out. Knight b8, d4, knight bd7, knight bd2, bishop b7, bishop c2, rook e8, knight f1, bishop f8. Knight g3, g6, a4, knight b6. Interesting, according to Carlos. c5 is probably more common. Yep. a5, knight bd7, b4, d5. Interesting. Knight e5, and so on and so forth. And on the next move, black will play c5 with counterplay. And bad bishop as the compensation for the missing pawn. What do you think about my suggestion, 17 d5? Is it a playable option for black? Did you find some flaw in my analysis? Thank you in advance for your reply. I did find a flaw in your analysis. That line, I think, doesn't work. Let's put it on the board. It's the Briar. In general, we sort of touched it a bit on the last question, but I do this like maybe once a year where I try to find some playable slow Spanish line, or Ruy Lopez, but they don't call it the Spanish torture for nothing. So in the end, I always come back to my good old Marshall or these b5 bishops, c5, whatever you want to call them, Chelyabinsk, Yurtayev lines that I usually play. And yeah, the Briar, of course, is a very decent opening. I'm not saying don't play the Briar. It's not really my cup of tea. First of all, a4 is obviously not forced. Bishop g5 and b3 are moves here. And after a4, yeah, I do think c5 is the main line for reasons. Knight b6, I once had a look at, but I couldn't really get it to work, and I haven't changed my opinion. a5, as Carlos mentioned, is the main move. b3 also exists, and I'm also not sure black is equal, but a5 is logical. Kick this knight right back. Knight bd7, and now Carlos gives b4. I also don't, I'll get to b4 in a second, but I also don't know how black equalizes after d5, just for the record. So obviously stopping black's idea with d5. After c6, you take and play b4. There's some game here, where will it? Lamy against Vandendoel, I believe, which Lamy won, and the position did look nice for white to me. So d5 could be another issue with your line. But after b4, the big problem is this d5 move here, I don't think works. The line you gave is correct. After knight e5, black is equal. But there is this move bishop g5 here, which is often a reaction that causes problems if black goes for this complete tension in the center by playing d6, d5 in these Briars. And I don't know what black should do after that. The main point is that h6, you just go bishop h4, maintain the pin, and g5, knight takes g5, hg, bishop g5. You can see the computer, if it's given some more time here, it will grow even higher. These positions normally are just way too scary for black and don't work. And if you can't go g5, it's just that white's pieces are a bit better prepared for action in the center here after d takes e4. I guess both work, but bishop takes e4, my computer is fairly excited about from the white perspective. E takes d4, runs into e5 all the time. So I could not get this to work after bishop g5. Have a look at that, but I can see two problems with the line, Carlos. One is this d5 move, which I think white is better, and the other is that after b4, d5, bishop g5 seems to bust the line as far as I can see. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend this knight b6 stuff if you want to play the prior. I believe c5 is where it's at. I'm doing this show live, by the way, and I can see some questions in the chat. First of all, thanks for the company, but I'm not gonna answer opening questions from the chat because I have my hands full going through the questions from the original article. That's sort of the concept of the show. But we will do this again in the future, and maybe in the future people won't even have to wait for 3 months or however long it took people until I get around to doing the show. So once again, apologies for all the wait. We'll do this again, or I think we have to beef up the format. Maybe we'll open it up to non-opening questions, but then I won't have any good answers. I don't know, we'll think about it, but there will be space to ask you questions in the future for sure. So what we got here, we have Mr. Sushi Boy, number 8. That's, I think, my favorite Sushi Boy. He's saying, hi Jan, in the classical King's Indian defense with d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, knight f3 castles, bishop e2, e5, bishop e3, knight bd7, castle c6, queen c2. I like to avoid closing the center with d5 as black can respond with c6, c5. I'm right there with you. I've spent my entire long and prestigious career trying to avoid closing the center against the King's Indian. I'll put it on the board in a second. Queen c2, queen e7, rook e1, rook e8. It seems that black is putting enough pressure on e4 to force white to play d5. Is there no choice for white but to play d5, c5? I'm not so comfortable with the structure for white. I hear you, as mentioned. Although the black queen e7 and rook e8 are perhaps suboptimal. Yep, was the best plan for white. A recent game, Pelletier against Candelario, continued d5, c5, g3, knight f8, knight h4. Is this the best continuation? Many thanks for your advice, which are, as always, tremendously instructive. Let's see. Not sure how instructive I can be on this one, but let's put it on the board. Let's get rid of the good old Briar and move on to the King's Indian. Knight b7, not the main move, but one of the lines which you can get via different move orders as well, of course. c6, queen c2, that's also what I've typically been doing, because as mentioned in the question, d5, c5, any computer will be very excited here, but I've never been too comfortable playing these positions. It always felt a bit easier for black to push the f-pawn up the board and hope for the best. So queen c2 is a move I like, queen e7, rook ad1, and the question focuses on the move rook to e8 here, putting pressure on d4 and e4, trying to force white to go d5. First of all, yeah, I think we have to do something in the center here. I've tried making rook to e1 work, but after e takes d4, black is fine. Knight d4, you can take the pawn. And bishop d4. I think Compy wanted c5, and once again, white has nothing. So we gotta do something. One line that I was always curious about here, I have this, I think, in some old notes, is not going d5, but going for broke with pawn to c5. It's a pawn sacrifice, and the point is, I think, dc5 is the best move. E, d, c, d should just be good for white. So d takes c5, and the point is that now our d pawn becomes a pass pawn and reaches d6. It's not exactly winning, but if you hate these d5, c5 structures as much as I do, could be a way to spice things up early and pose maybe some fresh problems for black, who's just wanted to close the position, then go back to f8, knight e8, f5, and see what happens. This sets a different set of problems. After c, d, e, d, well, there's many lines to look at. White wants to go d6, knight b5, knight c7. So I think my main move was a6, d6. I'll just give you the engine line I had here. d6, queen f8. I think I had a4 to stop b5, b6, bishop c4, targeting this guy, turning some knight g5. The computer line, this is, as mentioned, there's alternatives, but this is the spacebarring line. Something like this, or it's exactly this. Now we're threatening some stuff, so black should take. And after knight takes e4, queen c6, knight df6 check, bishop f6, rook d6. White actually wins the queen, because there is the threat of knight takes f6 followed by knight e8 that you can't let happen. The problem is this is not the end of the story. After bishop g7, takes. Black has a rook and a bishop and a pawn for the queen, so more or less a fair harvest. But I still thought that if anybody is better in this type of position, it's white. And if we price in the surprise value of c5, dc, d5, it could be worth doing it. As mentioned, this was not a complete analysis, but it's one option to avoid the close positions after the immediate d5. Exploiting once again the fact that the rook is on e8. If the rook was still on f8, there would probably be some takes, knight e8, and black would be fine. So you can consider that or analyze it a bit further if you want to. After d5, c5, it's one of those positions where I'm reasonably sure that once the aliens or alpha zeros have solved chess, they will figure out that this is a good position for white because of the space advantage. And as you mentioned, the rook is misplaced on e8, has to go back to f8 to support f5, so black lost some time, but I completely understand you're a bit uncomfortable playing these positions. So am I, so I also struggled to give a good plan. What Pelletier did makes a lot of sense to me, this g3, knight h4, just fighting against f5. I think in the old days I wanted to play rook e1, no, knight e1, rook f8, knight d3, knight e8, and now go f4, but I'm not sure that gives white anything, if I'm being honest. After takes, knight e5. It does look like black should hold. It's once again trying to not get this typical King's Indian position with f3, f5, or I don't know, you could also play a move like a3, f5, I guess takes, and f4. Where computers will always like white in these positions, and maybe they're correct, but I always found them tricky to play. So yeah, this c5 move could very well be something for you to look into. Other than that, I honestly don't know. I guess practice makes perfect. This g3, knight h4 makes a lot of sense to me, and as mentioned, I do believe that objectively white is better here, but I completely share your sentiment that they're a bit uncomfortable to play. Well, black players are so happy with their bad position. Always upsets me. So, best of luck, Sushi Boy. Sushi Boy. Let's get to the next question. By Mr. AIS Thesis. He's saying, "Hi Jan, my question concerns the London system. I know that all the lines you give are objectively more than fine for black, but in the knight d2 main line, the positions after knight e4, bishop e7, e5, see diagram scare me a little, even more so in the improved version with queen e2, bishop b7, rook d1, rook e8 inserted. It seems to me that black's king safety hangs by a thread, and it's very easy to blunder something, especially in blitz games. Quite a few people go for this line, and my score with black is something like 1 out of 5. I'm sorry to hear that. So as an alternative, I have had a look at the line knight d2, e6, knight gf3, bishop e7, with the funny idea 7, h3, and now bishop d6, preventing bishop g3 and forcing white to enter seemingly more harmless lines with bishop takes d6 or d takes c5. Otherwise, after eg bishop d3, black could go castle or go for the bishop immediately with knight h5 and maybe fine. Do you think that black manages to equalize completely with bishop e7? And if not, what is the critical test? Or should I just try to prepare the bishop d6 lines a bit more extensively to avoid getting crushed? I hope my question makes some sense. It does make a lot of sense. Thanks for your help. Alright, AIS Thesis. Let's see what we can do. Good old London system. Which I have to admit, I've been very disrespectful of the London over the years. And I still dislike this sentiment, or not dislike, but The sentiment behind it usually used to be white just wants to get his pieces out. And then, yeah, blitz out the first 15 moves and then have a look around. But it has become a more serious weapon. I think later in the session we also had a question about how best to handle this position after e6 and f3. As white, one particular line. So yeah, that would be my first pointer. I'm somewhere with you that normally I haven't played bishop d6 here in blitz games. But I've mainly been playing cd, ed, knight h5, which is gaining in popularity. It looks very stupid, but there is some point to it. I think I also gave it in my video series as an alternative. Bishop e3, bishop d6, and play this position. We'll cover it in more detail because I think there's a question about it later. But that's one alternative you could look into. Then, yeah, I kind of hear you in these main lines. I still believe that black is fine here after rook d1. The move I gave is rook e8, h6 also exists, but they can be a little scary. And frankly, I've been avoiding them myself because it feels like they are easier to play or more fun to play with white. So I still believe that black is okay, and if you feed it into computers they will hold, but I get the idea that this can look a little scary. There's also this other line which I keep forgetting how you get it. You go e4 immediately, e4, bishop e7, e5, knight h5, knight g5, which I think we had in the previous show. Well, once again, black defense, but the right was not super smooth. Something like this. I forgot my own recommendation. I think bishop h6 is what I wanted here. Does that make sense? Memory stuff. But anyway, I do get the point that it seems like white gets to have more fun here. As mentioned, my solution was mainly going for the cd, ed, knight h5 business, hoping to catch people a bit off guard with it. But bishop e7 is also a move that has gained a bit of a following. It looks so strange to me, but it's not necessarily bad. As you explained, the point is after h3. Now you go bishop d6, avoiding these bishop g3 lines. When play continues after dc5 and so on, but it does look like black has fair chances to equalize there. I've never done it because I'm not a big fan of the positions after knight to e5. Castles bishop to d3, and it's not really a value judgment. It just feels somewhat passive from the black side to play. There are games here. I think knight takes e5 has been played, and bishop d6 now was also played by someone good recently, maybe Wesley So. I think So did something like this. And white played h4, which looked a bit aggressive. But I couldn't really figure out what to do if white just castled here. I wasn't too comfortable with these positions. Once again, that doesn't mean they have to be bad or anything. But yeah, bishop e7, knight e5 was what turned me a bit off from it. So yeah, I think, well, you can work some more on bishop d6, as you mentioned. It does hold, but I do understand that there are some scary spots. And the cd, ed, knight h5 we'll revisit later in the show, but I think is a viable option. Leads to a very different position than what the white players are typically trying to go for in the London system. So I hope that helped a bit, and best of luck fighting the good old London in the near and distant future. What's up, chat? What are you guys talking about? Where Morphe was from? American. Irish Svidler is saying, London system is rubbish. Black can get an easy game if he's calm. Yeah, I've had that stance for decades, but it has become a more serious weapon. And as usual, when you computerize some old harmless looking opening, sometimes things show up. White's play is not illogical. He gets the bishop out, then puts his pawns on dark squares, develops his pieces. So we might have to start taking the London system seriously. I do still stand by everything that I said in my video series for how to play with black. But it does look like the London is here to stay. Unfortunately, I might even give in and we might have a video series about the London from the white side in the future. Not by me. I can't compromise myself that much. But I think it is in the making. Alright, what else do we have? Tom 2016 wants to be on the screen. Here he is. Tom 2016 is saying hi. In the 4 bishop c5 scotch, after knight c6, queen f6, queen f3, what do you think is more reliable for black? 6bc or 6dc? I understand both should be theoretically fine, but I'm not sure which I should play. Thanks for the great show, Tom. Thank you, thank you. I'd go dc. Let's put it on the board c. I usually play knight f6 here. We have some knight f6 topic coming up later, but it's more a matter of taste. I do believe both moves are fine, bishop c5 and knight f6, and even queen f6. So bishop c5, knight c6, queen f6, queen f3. This is the main move nowadays. Queen d2 is a bit out of fashion. Queen f3, and yeah, I somewhat prefer dc. I think the high-rated players here are also going DC. I've seen some games by Carlsen, some games by our friend Laurent Fressinet, who's a very good theoretician, believe it or not, who got an easy game with this move against Nepomniachtchi. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So DC, of course, the drawback is white gains the pawn majority on the king side again, and we have these double pawns. The advantage is easy development. This bishop can get out. Black can castle queen side if he wants to. And computer-wise speaking, this seems to be just fine. The main move nowadays is knight to c3. The bishop comes out to e6. And here, I think Nepomniachtchi typically goes queen g3. And my computer likes h5. Nothing particularly wrong with long castles either. Hoping for bishop g5, bishop f2. But my computer likes h5. Start harassing this queen by playing h4. Can't take on c7 yet because f2 is hanging. Most white players, I guess, would play h4. And no knight h6. He says that black is doing okay. So that could be an idea, but nothing particularly wrong, as mentioned, with long castles either. The other move is bishop e3, when generally I think black could exchange everything, but the trendy move is to go bishop b4 here, putting some pressure on this guy. And this just seems to be doing fine for black. For example, queen f6, what they normally do, knight f6, f3. Once again, white has a better structure. But after knight d7, black seems to be controlling enough squares. He's preparing to maybe take on c3 and then, go knight e5 or knight b6 and go after the c4 square. There's also the idea to castle and go f5. So practice and engines have been showing that this is equal. Therefore, yeah, I think DC is the easier way to play. I also don't know of any BC refutation, but both these moves, knight d2 and knight c3, I'm not 100% sure I'd be comfortable with black. So yeah, DC would be my choice. But as you mentioned, I do think that both are considered to be alright, and it's a bit of a matter of taste. DC, you get easier piece play, but you have to be accurate not to land in some unpleasant endgame where white has this majority for free, but it does look like black with active moves. The key move being this bishop b4 in the line I just showed. Seems to be doing alright. If not, join team knight f6. It's a beautiful place. There's some questions in the chat how this show works. Yeah, it's basically me answering old opening questions that were asked in an article. We've been doing this more or less every couple of months. We put an article on Chess24. I get like 50, 60, 70 opening questions by premium members and then answer them in different installments. This is the season finale because, yeah, I and the studio, we've been busy, so this is wrapping up and people have been waiting way too long for these answers. We'll do another one in the future. But yeah, currently this is not a very interactive show. It's me going through the questions that were posted in the article. I think the link is in the chat. And doing my best to answer them in a somewhat sensible manner. Spoiler alert, I even slightly prepare for these shows. I don't know everything off the top of my head, so normally I go through the questions in advance. Sometimes I look them up in more, sometimes in less detail. Let's get to the next question. Petrogradsky is saying, "Hi Jan, thanks for running this sublime chess website." Thank you. I'm not really running anything, but I'm here. In the Pierz Austrian attack, e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, f4, bishop g7, knight f3. What do you consider best for black from a practical view if you're looking to make white life difficult? That's interesting wording. C5 or castles, and why? Best unders. I guess I should put it on the board, but yeah, the wording makes my answer a little trickier, because I think c5 is the best move. But from a practical perspective, if you want to make white's life difficult, it's the usual. Like, do you want to play the best move and run the risk of white knowing his stuff and the best you can hope for being equality? Or do you want to take the risk of getting a worse position but leaving more play in that position? I think that's more or less the trade-off here. Obviously, I should point out that one d6 doesn't really fight for the center, and you pay that price for it. So yeah, let's look at it. I think c5 is the best move here. This is the move that Magnus Carlsen has also been playing on the rare occasions where he played Pierz. After dc, queen a5, black is supposed to be fine. So the main move by far is bishop b5 check, bishop to d7, e5, and play becomes fairly forced. I think earlier this season we had a question about more specific stuff after knight g4, e6. So you might want to check my answer there for more detail. If I recall correctly, I said I think fe is fine. But you risk this forced draw after, how does this go? After this, right? Knight d8, bishop f2. King d2, bishop e3. This is a famous line for fixing draws. Well, bishop b5 continues play, but it looked to me like black was somewhat worse there. There's also this other line with bishop d7, queen d7, d5, which I think black is supposed to be okay in, but is another thing that you have to keep in mind. So that's c5. I think that's the best move, but it requires some study, and you won't surprise your opponents very much. Then again, you probably won't surprise your opponents very much with castles either. White has different moves here. a3 is a move, but I never really liked the main lines for black here after bishop d3. This might be somewhat ignorant, but yeah, I just could never make friends with them. I think the main line is knight a6, castle c5, but after d5, I just prefer white's position. You go queen e1, queen h4, f5, and so on and so forth. I read somewhere that this was one of the positions that was given in one of these Stockfish Alpha Zero matches, and Stockfish evaluated the position as so much better for white that he went all berserk here and started sacrificing pawns with c4, bishop c4, b5. But that wasn't because he thought it was such a great idea, but because he thought that passive play was doomed to fail. So yeah, not too big a fan of this knight a6, c5 stuff. I've noticed there were some recent games where black went knight c6, intending to strike in the center with e5, which is closer to my heart, just strategy-wise. I like the center. But I'm not sure if black equalizes after e5, d, e, f, e. I've seen some game, I forgot who played, Saric was black to get into some trouble. Maybe it was against Ray Robson. I think it was against Ray Robson. Some knight h5, knight e2, f6, ef, ef. Which at first sight looks alright for black, but his pieces are a little funny, and I would guess that this is a somewhat better position for white. Not unplayable, but I wasn't a big fan. So yeah, to answer your question, I do think that c5 is the best move. If you're looking to, keep more play in the position, this castles, followed by knight a6. Could be more your cup of tea, or followed by knight c6, but objectively, I am team c5. With the usual disclaimer. I don't play the Pierz, I don't play much 1 e4, so not a giant expert. But it looks to me like c5 is alright. Castles, not so sure. There's also the usual debate, like can you start with bishop d3, or I think my friend Jordan van for Race likes to go a3 here. These moves exist as well, I'm not sure. They're posing serious problems, but you have to be worried about all kinds of options. And frankly, I'm not even sure if f4 is your biggest worry in this position. All these bishop e3, h3, bishop e3, queen d2 plans. Fairly scary as well. And then again, normally you don't play the peers to make a draw in 20 moves, but to get in unbalanced position. And you might very well get that. And there, yeah. Castles. Okay, I keep repeating myself. Riskier, but more hopes for a full game than if your opponent blitzes out stuff after c5, bishop b5. Objectively, I do believe c5 is the way. What else do we have? I need to drink something. Mr. Normal Name is saying, "Hi Jan, how should black play after e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, g3, d5, ed knight d5, bishop g2, knight c3, bc, knight c6, knight f3, bishop c5, castles, castles, rook e1. Frankly, a line I never gave much thought to, even though I guessed this would be my black repertoire, because I just always thought black is fine there, come on. But let's have a look. e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, g3, d5, takes, takes, bishop g2, takes, takes, knight c6, knight f3, bishop c5. I like this move, just fighting against d4, castles, castles, rook to e1. I guess that's the main move here as well. Black should play queen f6, covers the pawn, keeps an eye on d4, and white goes for d3. Here, I think the main move is h6. I'd prefer to do without h6, frankly, because it can happen later. Ah, no, I'll make some random moves. Not that random, I think. This is more or less how people play. That if we move the queen here, that we want to play f6. I'm not sure I'm misstating my case very clearly, but basically what I'm saying is once you play h6, it's going to be much harder to play f6 as well, because it will really weaken the dark squares. So I would try to do without h6. I think h6 is alright as well. But I like the move bishop b6 here, just stepping out of the way of any d4 attacks, blocking the b file against potential stuff, and getting out of the way. There's also, once again, this is not to be taken on a move-by-move basis, but on an ideas basis. There is always this bishop g4, bishop h5 option. That's very double-edged, because after g4, often white can win a lot of tempi, or even if it's not tempi, he can gain control over the dark squares. Knight d2 is probably wrong here. Probably you should go knight h4. But just to show ideas, this bishop g4, bishop h5, I'm also never too sure about. So I like the move bishop b6, not really committing to anything yet, and sort of setting a trap, because the most obvious move is bishop to g5, hitting the queen. The queen goes here, and now the logical follow-up once again looks to be knight d2, fighting for these light squares. But here somehow, by continuing to move our queen around, after queen g6, black already has a very good game, as you can see by the little engine bar, or it prefers black here. Knight e4 does not really work because of f5. So white has to go bishop e3, and now bishop a5. That's another point of bishop b6. Bishop can go here, attack this pawn. Surprisingly awkward. And yeah, I was a bit surprised by the evaluation here, but after c4, b6, computers really like black's position already. Well, white is somewhat stuck with his pieces. Now obviously this line is not forced, and after bishop b6 there are other moves like rook b1 or bishop e3 or whatnot, but I do think that all of those are fine. After bishop e3, if you want to be a cynic like me, you could just go bishop a5, asking white what he plans to do. Queen d2 is very clumsy, because now after h6 followed by bishop g4, this knight no longer has that square. So white will probably play bishop d2, and here after bishop b6 doesn't really have a way to improve his position. So bishop e3 would offer a move repetition, which obviously we don't have to take. Here bishop g4 is a legit option. Once again, this kind of business happens and the position can become quite sharp after queen h4 intending f5. Things can become very edged, but there's also nothing particularly wrong with playing a move like rook to e8 and bishop d7, rook b8, keeping the position. I think Compi also says that e4, no, it wasn't here, is an option once in a while, but it wasn't here because it runs into bishop g5, which is unpleasant. So I'm not sure I'm being all that clear, but h6 is the main move here. I prefer to do without. I'd go bishop b6, hoping for this bishop g5 business, which is bad. And after bishop e3, then yeah, bishop a5 is the very safe choice, while bishop g4 leads to more lively play. However, objectively, there's absolutely nothing to be worried about. We have sound pieces, all on good squares. Arguably the better pawn structure, so as long as we avoid white getting this grip on the light squares that he's dreaming of, black is completely fine. What's next? We have Mr. K. Lamar 74. And he's saying, hi Jan, after d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6. So on the screen, yeah, more or less. cd, ed, bishop g5, c6. What is the difference between 6, queen c2 and 6, e3? Why 6, e3 is the main line allowing bishop f5? It seems to me that queen c2 should be the way to go. Or by playing e3, why wants to avoid queen c2 lines? Thanks. Now you're speaking my language. Carlsbad variation. Oops, sorry. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6, cd, ed, bishop to g5, pawn to c6. And yeah, in this position, white has to make a chance. K. Lamar asks if queen has to make a choice. If queen c2 or e3. Let's start with queen c2 maybe for argument's sake. Queen c2 stops the move bishop f5 as mentioned. The reason e3 is more popular than queen c2 is mainly that after queen c2 you will get one of these knight h5 based lines. Bishop e7, or against most players that is. Of course black can still transpose to the old classical lines with short castles, but those are nice for white, so probably black won't go here. But instead they will play knight h5 or h6, followed by knight h5, which sometimes white wins these positions, but black has proven himself to be very, very resilient with his knight b6, bishop e6, short long castle, king b8, knight goes back to f6 or g6, knight g7, bishop f5. And the more you look at those, the more frustrated you get. Also the immediate knight h5, at least that's what happens to me in these structures. So that's the reason why people start with e3. Because now after bishop e7, bishop d3, let's say knight bd7, white doesn't have to allow knight h5 business with queen c2. Here you can play a move like h3, which Wesley So has played recently, which is interesting. Or you can play knight g2, which still allows knight h5, but white keeps some more flexibility. For example, here, let's say, the queen is not committed to c2 yet and can go to d2, and we can play for a plan with short castles. Rook e1, f3, e4, which I think is much more unpleasant for black than the equivalent position where we've already committed the queen to c2. So that's the reason that people start with e3. But of course you are correct that e3 does allow bishop f5, which opens this theoretical can of worms. The critical move is queen f3, trying to hit this construction, and here debates are still ongoing if black can hold this or not. Most people, me included, quit on this line after Carlsen beat Kramnik in this knight f3, knight h4, bishop e7, knight e2. Some people have been trying to salvage this for black. White wants to go knight g3, put a knight on f5, and black must suffer. So what they've been doing now is to play f5 here go g3, bishop h4, gh, mainly knight f6, I think. Which, yeah, the computer doesn't like for black, but some strong players have been holding this, or failed to win this as white. I think that was a game. Kramnik, Ispiano maybe? I don't know, I still don't like it as black, but I would have to spend more time to evaluate if white has serious winning chances here or not. Computer is just very happy, he says whatever, knight f4, knight h5, king d2. Oh, bishop e2 first, takes, followed by king d2. And he's saying we're much better because of this bishop, but it could very well be that serious study shows that black is too solid here. So I'm not sure. I am not very tempted to go here with black, and from the white perspective, for me it would be a bigger priority, as I think it is for most guys, to avoid the good version, quote-unquote, of these knight h5 lines than to avoid black suffering in these bishop f5 endgames. I'm reading, I'm out of sync. That'd be a pity. Let me know. Is it bad? Can we fix it in post? Should I stop doing these things as a live show? I'm sorry to hear that. And yeah, it's a bit worrying. Anyway, I shall soldier on and answer the question from Mr. Pavel Lakon Szymanski, asking about the French. Not exactly my area of expertise, but I shall try. He's saying, "Hi Jan, greetings from Warsaw. In the French defense, I faced the following line: e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, e5, c5, a3, bishop c3, bc, queen a5, bishop d2, queen a4, queen b1, c4. What is the idea for white to crack open the position and keep chances for the win, especially in the case when black is going to castle queenside, stand still and wait for the draw?" Honestly, I don't know. I'm not much of an e4 player, and if I stumble into this position, I typically play knight to d2, but I do have an opinion, which is after knight c3, bishop b4, e5, c5, a3, takes, queen a5, bishop d2, queen a4. All these weird things that these Wiener players do, no? I don't think queen b1 is the move that should be played. It looks too artificial and you're forcing black to play c4. But let's face it, these French players, they want to play c4. They want to close the position. That's what they do. I think queen g4 is a much more critical move. And I believe practice bears that out as well. Caruana recently played queen g4, and most strong players have been playing queen g4 here. So that would be my advice. Hit this pawn. King f8 is what black typically plays, because g6 seems to be a really serious weakening of the dark squares. After g6, knight f3. Black just has not had a great time here. So they play king f8, and now Caruana and other strong players have just been pushing their h pawn up the board, saying, I'm worried about nothing. Let's not close the position. You're welcome to eat some of my pawns. But your king is weak, and your pieces are not exactly developed. Obviously, the line continues. After queen c2, white can ignore everything, as long as his center stays intact, and go h5, queen e4. This endgame is just much better for white. Knight e2, knight g3. So black should not touch the c2 pawn. After knight c6, once again, you just say, I don't care, I'll push my h-pawn. cd4 runs into h6, which is really bad news, so black should play h6. And now the queen calmly returns to d1, having achieved some things on the king's side. When cd4 was played in Caruana's game, but after knight f3, white gains a lot of play. And frankly, a good position. There's always this rook h4 move. So this looks very dangerous. I think b6 is probably more prudent here. But after knight f3, bishop a6, once again, we can play this funky rook h4 move. I like white's position, and there is some clear plans emerging on the king side. So I have to pause a bit because I'm never that sure, since I really have zero experience and zero practice in these positions. But it does look to me like this queen g4 is a much more testing move than this queen b1 you mentioned. And in this position, yeah, I guess one needs patience. Normally the knight goes here and you try to provoke a weakness and then you try to break through on the king side in 100 moves by carefully preparing f5. But black will be ready for it. There was this recent game in a similar structure, MVL against Vallejo, which also ended in a draw. I don't know, I would guess white is objectively somewhat better, but French players will also very often enjoy playing these positions, especially if they choose a line with queen a5, queen a4, followed by c4. I would not go queen b1, but I would try to put them under pressure by playing queen g4 in this position. I hope that helps Pavel Akon. Szymanski. Next we have Shmuliki saying, "Hello Jan, thanks for your amazing work at Chess24." Thank you. My question is about the Najdorf and is from both black and white perspective. In the last years, there is a rise in the popularity of anti-Najdorf and Najdorf sidelines. Many players started playing bishop b5, 3 bishop b5 check, 5 f3, 6 knight b3, 6 h4, 6 queen d3, etc. Which one do you consider best and why? Please give some specific details, for example, 3 bishop b5, knight d7, bishop a4, or 3 bishop b5, knight d7, castles a6, bishop d3, or bishop takes d7, knight gf6, rook e1, b5, c4, exclamation mark. What is the reason for the rise in those lines? Of course the Najdorf is good, but still. The reason for playing less 6 bishop g5, Gelfand, the poison pawn, the delayed poison pawn, 6 knight bd7, or just some new ideas for black, such as 6 e6, f4, knight bd7, queen e2, h6, bishop h4, e5, is the reason for playing less 6 bishop e3, f3, e5 followed by h5, or something else? Thanks in advance. So if I understand this question correctly, you're saying, please cover the entire Najdorf. Is that right? Cover the sidelines, cover 6 bishop e3, cover 6 bishop g5, and cover 3 bishop b5 check? That does sound like a tall order in this format. But let's get a chessboard. So if I had to choose, once again, it's a matter of style. I'm not really an e4 player. I would always go bishop b5 check here, because these resulting positions would be much closer to my heart. You can often get a Maroczy structure, which is a very typical thing for d4 players to have. And it, yeah, fits my style more, especially if you're not used to open Sicilians. So I'd certainly be team bishop b5 check. After knight d7, yeah, we have a question later that addresses this bishop a4 business. And yeah, I know video and sound are out of sync, which I'm not happy about, but this is a live show and I'm not sure I can do much about it. We'll record it and fix it in post, hopefully. But currently, it's not out of sync for me, so all I can do is keep talking. If it's too annoying, I will recommend not to watch this live, but wait for the post-produced version. Normally I don't do these shows, these opening clinks live. But apparently there's something wrong, and I'm very sorry for it. So what was I talking about? Bishop b5 check, knight d7. Yeah, bishop a4 we have a question about later, I believe, so I'll leave it for that. But it's certainly an interesting move played by our friend Niels Grandelius. Castles, knight gf6, rook e1, or a6, bishop d3 are nowadays mainstream lines. I would not give this bishop because I like bishops, and as far as I know, after bishop d7. Black is doing alright. So this line is interesting. When, yeah, you can look at pretty much any recent Svidler game to figure out what's going on here. Svidler, Giri, a lot of strong players have been playing this, and it's a serious battlefield. There's also some older Magnus games. So yeah, this is a viable line. Bishop a4 is a viable line. I'm not sure which one I would choose. Maybe just to be cool and surprising, I play bishop a4, which looks stupid but makes sense, which is always a nice bonus. So yeah, this would be my choice. As for all the other stuff, mainly, I don't know. Bishop g5, yeah, you mentioned black has a wealth of lines to choose from. The poison pawn is a lot of work for both sides, or the h6 followed by queen b6 business. And yeah, there are all these other trendy lines as well. Bishop e3, I've normally argued that knight g4 is an issue, even though MVL ran into some trouble recently against Magnus and in an earlier game against in Gibraltar as well. But I guess that black is also reasonably comfortable in these e5 lines. f3, yeah, now you're committed to f3, so you don't have bishop e3, e5, knight f3, and after knight b3, can't say I'm very up to date, but it does look like the neither of specialists still do not mind going for these discussions here. After g4, b5, g5, knight h5, Wojtaszek and the gang are still going here, so I'm not sure it's so much about these h5 lines. I think the main lines are also far from that, from the black perspective. Yeah, as for all the side lines, queen d3, h4, a3, a4, whatever, I think most have not really caught on. Currently the most popular one seems to be Vichy's move, bishop d3, which I believe is here to stay. And Vichy's played some nice games against Chimera and so on. Nepomna, she also recently played it. So I do believe this one is an interesting line. After e5, you play knight e2. And I'm expecting more debates there. But yeah, if I had to choose one from the ones you mentioned, I'd certainly be a bishop b5 check player. So thank you for your question, Mr. Shmuliki. Sorry for the brief answer, but that's like 18 topics in the question. Zeverar is saying, hi Jan, recently my opponent surprised me with a trendy line in the Scotch. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, ed, knight d4, knight f6, knight c6, bc, e5, queen e7, queen e2, knight d5, h4. I was not prepared for this cheeky move and started improvising with 8a5. My opponent replied g3 and I quickly went astray, bishop a6, c4, and now I played the very dubious queen c5. Sorry. In any case, I felt very uncomfortable during the game and I was soundly beaten by my lower-rated opponent. Sorry to hear that. I'm very interested to hear how you would tackle this line. I guess we could and should follow Kramnik's lead and go queen e6, but I'm not sure how to proceed after knight d2. Your help would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, thank you. Love your shows and your opening advice. Keep up the good work. Well, I mean, thank you for that. Thanks in advance, Zavera. Yeah, I'm with you. In general, on these sidelines, one can trust the now retired great theoretician Vladimir Kramnik pretty blindly. h4 is one of these moves that I sort of noticed exists, but it looks so ridiculous that I had a really hard time ever spending time on it. Because, as mentioned, it's so hard to believe. But I came to the same conclusion that you came to. Let's just follow Kramnik, play queen e6, open the door for this bishop, and other than that, keep our options open. Sometimes we also want to go d6, ed, bishop d6, and I do believe that black is doing very fine here. After g3, Kramnik played this knight b4, putting pressure early on. And as you mentioned as well, the critical move seems to be knight to d2, when there were a bunch of games with d6, which I guess equalizes, but I like a5 better in this position. When I think black has absolutely nothing to worry about, this a5 is always nice, because it sort of anticipates what's white going c4 and b3, when we can already go for a4. So after a5, it's not obvious to me what white wants. If they go g3 here, then once again knight b4 is asking some very unpleasant questions. For example, knight f3, bishop a6, c4, queen g6, threatening a little check here, h5, queen c2, and black is at least equal. Therefore, I don't think g3 is all that critical. I guess the critical move here is to play c4, after which bishop a6 for some reason was less good, mainly because it blunders a piece. So we have to move the knight, and here knight b4 was less convincing as well. I guess knight e4 works. Therefore, c4, and this is the one thing I guess we have to remember, should be met by knight to b6. The good news is, I don't know more than this, and I think black is very fine. After b3, you go a4. Other than that, you want to bring the bishop out very quickly. For example, I guess queen e4, you go bishop b4, bishop d3, bishop a6. And we start putting some pressure. Is there anything else worth talking about? I just think black is fine, frankly. Knight f3, bishop b4 check once again is awkward for white. h5, we can go d6 if we really want to. ed bishop d6 and say, okay, my pawns are a bit broken up, but I have a serious lead in development. This will be a target. And once again, I do not really believe this is an issue for black. So I don't know, maybe I should study h4 some more before it comes back to bite me. But after h4, queen e6, I couldn't see any problem whatsoever. And as he mentioned, Kramnik is a pretty good go-to guy in these lines. What else we got? Carlsen 2 is saying, I recently watched the game Navarra Grandelius, played in the Gibraltar Masters. Navarra chose the variation e4, c5, knight 3, d6, bishop b5, knight d7, bishop a4, describing it as rare but fashionable afterwards. I assume the main idea is to play c4 and thereby prevent b5. Could you explain other ideas and typical white setups on this line? I would like to hear your opinion on this line and the white chances to get an advantage too. Thanks in advance. Yeah, this all of a sudden has become a serious move, as I already teased earlier. It looks ridiculous. The most obvious point to starting with bishop a4 is that if you castle and black goes a6, bishop a4 is less good now because the bishop gets trapped. Well, if you want to be smart and start with c4, saying, haha, after a6, I'll go bishop a4. First of all, you've committed to c4, which in some lines, even after bishop a4, you don't want to. You want to go c3, bishop c2. We'll get to that. But secondly, black would now probably try to do without a6. Play something like that, 6, g6. And say, congratulations on your setup with the pawn on c4. This is still a reasonably playable position. But bishop a4 is trying, first of all, to keep the option open if we want to go c4 or not. And also, it sets a nice little trap, or I'm not sure if we can call it a trap. But after knight gf6, white castles, and it turns out this pawn should not be touched, which at first sight is not obvious to me at all. It's a central pawn. My instinct would be very much to take it. Invest the two tempi. But these positions are extremely scary for black. cd knight d4, e6, knight b5, another point of bishop a4. The knight can use this square. And the black position is already somewhat crumbling. So we can't really touch that guy. After e6, there's always this tactic, d5, e5, knight takes e5, which is very unpleasant too. de, rook e5, bishop e7, d6. Not great. So bishop to a4. One point is that I guess after castles, knight f6 castles, if black now goes a6, we go c4, and once again, this pawn remains untouchable. The key idea is more or less the same after e6, d5, e5. Boom, we take. Therefore, black should not should not be too greedy, and he should play some setup. I guess with g6. e6 you could also argue about. But some position like that. Knight c3, bishop g7, d3. Castles h3. Which I'm not sure if this is better for white, but it's playable and it's fresh. White reserves the option to go d4 later on. You could argue the knight on d7 is a bit misplaced. It would probably much rather be on c6. And yeah, Niels lost this game after b6, even though I do believe this is probably the setup that black should go for. And it's hard to believe black could be much worse here after b6, bishop b7. But it does lead to a reasonably fresh position where yeah, white has chances for an opening advantage, I think is fair to say. As mentioned, black is solid, but the play very much continues. Now the question, of course, is after knight gf6 castles, does black have to spend any time on any a6 business, or can he just go g6, bishop g7? But then, if you start with g6, rook e1, bishop g7, we see 1 point of white delaying c4. Then this position he can very much still switch plans and play c3. Then go d4. When the bishop on a4 is really not misplaced, can always go back to b2, to c2. So it is a cute little move. I'm not sure it will be the refutation of the Sicilian, but the mere fact that you can give bishop b5 check, knight d7, and now not castle, but move the bishop to a4 unprovoked, is sort of funny. And I have some sympathy for it. I'm not sure it will lead to a serious advantage, but it's very much playable. And yeah, I'm aware I'm out of sync. I will do my best that we get it fixed in post-production, but there's nothing I can do about it now. So if you don't want to watch it live, it will be on YouTube and on Chess24 and so on and so forth later on. So thanks everybody for pointing out it's out of sync. Not much I can do about it right now. So I'll soldier on and we'll figure it out later. But yeah, very sorry. Just don't look at me. That will solve it. Focus on the board. I also get some opening questions in the chats. In this show, I am just going through the opening questions that I got in the article we posted a while ago for Jan's Opening Clinic, season 23, and answering those. I'm a bit late with that, but we do this a couple times a year where Chess24 premium users can ask me their opening questions, and then I answer them in different installments. This is the last one of those. So sorry I don't get into new questions in this very show. And to show you how late I am answering these questions, Best Berliner in this one is asking, do you have any early NBA Finals predictions this year? I do. Believe it or not, I do like the Toronto Raptors. I have a feeling the Warriors will suffer like 2 fatal injuries to 2 of their 3 best players. And that will be too much to overcome. But I'm not an expert. Best Berliner 28 is saying, hello Jan, I have a question about an annoying line that's hard for me to understand. After the moves, e4, e5, knight 3, knight c6, d4, ed, knight e4, knight 6, knight c3, bishop e4, knight c6, bc, bishop d3, d5, ed, castle, castle, cd, h3, c6, queen f3. We reach a position where I don't really get what black should be aiming for. I have the same problem. It seems like white will meet bishop d6 with bishop f4, followed by knight e2, and can then meet c5 with c4, creating a favorable structure for white. One option seems to be to aim for simplifications along the e-file, but this can make the position very dry. Additionally, it is hard to create winning chance in these positions, and this seems to be a favorite of my opponents who are lower rated than me. I'm right there with you. What would your suggestion be after move 11, and what do you think black should be aiming for? Or do you think an early alternative, such as knight, bishop g4, would be better for creating winning chances? Though those positions also seem dry. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, you're right with everything you said, in my opinion, Sam. It's one of the banes of an e4 e5 player's existence. The 4 knights does exist, and it's solid. In the meantime, since the question was asked, I have published a video series about the four knights from the black perspective. So for more details on what I think, I will refer you to that. But basically, I sort of agree that in these positions after CD, whatever, h3, c6, queen f3, I think black is equal, but it's very boring and seems somewhat easier to play with white. All this stuff, whatever, bishop e6 followed by queen b8. It's very dry, and I think it's equal, but it's not particularly exciting. So in the video series, I did give this move bishop g4, which since then has been played quite a bit. Not taking credit here, it was played before. It's not a new idea or anything, but it has been played quite a bit at the highest stage. Aronian played it against Yu Yangyi, and then Yu Yangyi repeated it against Mamedyarov. f3, bishop h5, yeah. Black equalizes. For details, once again, check my series. Same thing after bishop e2, knight e2. But it does not completely change the nature of the position as being reasonably dry. There is no explaining that away. So, yeah, my advice is to go bishop g4 if you reach that position and if you are facing a lower rated opponent who you feel will blitz out the four knights. Sometimes even I touch a different pawn first move and you go c5 or c6, where of course dry lines also exist, but no four knights where the structure becomes so defined and pieces disappear early from the board. So the problem is very real, that it's a solid line for white and it's annoying. It's not hard to equalize, but it's annoying as the higher rated player to face it. And yeah, outside of this bishop g4, there's not so much I can do. Or I can see. Sorry, I was already switching to the video being out of sync, so that I was resorting to my default answer. There's not so much I can do right now. But yeah, this line is a problem. I've done a video series to address all these problems as well as I could. But as usual, if you're playing sound openings with black and are equalizing, white will have some dry options along the way. There's not much to be done about that. And there's the eternal trade-off. Like, how gambly do you want to be? But once we enter this, it's sort of hard to do. I recommend bishop g4, and I think it's fine. But I do understand the problem very much. Moving on. It's sort of a variation of that topic in some way. Nate Solon, FIDE is saying, "Hi Jan, like many players, I enjoy the Nimzo, but I have a harder time against 1 d4, knight f6, c4, e6, 3, knight f3. In particular, I really don't like playing against the Catalan, so I'm reluctant to play 3 d5. What would you recommend for someone looking to spice things up here? I'm usually looking to play for a win as black. Is the Benoni a bridge too far?" Yeah, it's sort of the eternal question. Like, I'm black against a solid opponent who plays, for example, the Catalan. What should I do to play for a win? And there's no good answer to that question. It depends on your appetite for risk. I normally enter the Catalan and I'm on this endless quest to find a line that I like there to spice things up recently. I've been looking at this Caruana line with c6. There's also a6. I've done a video series about bishop e7, which I still think is very solid. Bishop b4 check, I also think is a very solid playable line. Bishop d2, bishop e7, so there are options, but I understand none of those are all that sexy. And yeah, if the Benoni is too much, you have to decide for yourself. The same about the King's Indian. Like the King's Indian and the Benoni, and to some extent the Leningrad Dutch, are the sort of three go-to openings when you're trying to play for a win. With black against d4. You often see it even by very strong players who know better than playing the Dutch, like Nakamura when he had to play for a win in the US Championship. He went for f5, was against John. And yeah, similar things about the Benoni and the, the King's Indian. I've never been able to play those because I'm just too uncomfortable in positions where I have less space or I just consider myself strategically much worse. That's more of a shortcoming of myself, and that I'm not always maximizing the expected value by going for a more double-edged line just because I can't stand the look of them. So you have to decide for yourself if you want to study the Benoni. I think it's an opening worth studying. The rewards could be rich because you are taking people on territory they don't enter very often. Of course, you also have to study stuff like this. If you play a boring guy like me, I would probably play knight c3, and good luck spicing the game up there. So there's nothing free. There's also the moves b6 and bishop b4 check, but b6 g3 or bishop b4 check, both bishop d2 or knight d2 are not exactly pure parties of joy from Black's perspective either. So it's not a coincidence that I would guess 9 out of 10 top players, if they face this position after knight f3, they will play d5. It's sort of best by test at this point. And then after knight c3, I'm sure you can find a system you like, be it dc, c6, c5, bishop b4, bishop e7. Plenty of options there. But yeah, I have not refuted the Catalan yet, and I don't think anybody will in the near future. It's sort of a lifelong task to choose a line for one particular game that one feels generates winning chances there. But yeah, as usual, we get variations of this question every show. I don't have the answer how to play for a win against one d4 or one e4 while getting a safe and sound position. I'm not sure that answer exists. That's why people, me included, score much worse with Black against lower rated players than with White. Whoa, this is a wall of text coming up here. Isa Vulpes saying, "Hey Jan, many thanks for all your work. I just drew someone outrating me by 300 points in the Vienna, thanks to your video series. Glad to hear that. My question is about the Italian 2 knights with 8 bishop d3. I know what you're talking about. Bishop c4, knight f6, knight g5, d5. I'll put it on the board. A book I have recommends with a draw, which is theoretically fine, of course, but I can't play this against a lower rated player. I'm fine with an equal endgame to outplay someone in, but here's no room." Yeah, this is... okay, it's sort of the eternal debate. I don't know many lower rated players, or any that will prepare a very sharp line like this one, and then with White spend a lot of time looking at this, and then try to force a draw here against a high rated opponent. This is a deep fear we all have. Oh my god, lower rated player, I'm Black. He might force a draw. I don't think it happens very often. I could be wrong about this, and they certainly play solid lines and are happy with the draw. But to enter this position, trying to make a draw, I think, would be very rare. Anyway, that's just the general point. Let's get to the theoretical discussion. So, the book recommends knight e5, knight f3, bishop d6, castles knight f4. Takes, rook e1, c5. Wasn't this recent game Stockfish Alpha Zero? I think it was. Knight takes c4 here, not rook e1. Rook e8, queen e8, bc, queen e6, and Black won in exemplary style. So that could be a way to deviate and try to pose problems. I guess White can hold this position as well, but there's one deviation right there, which could be worth looking into. And once again, I don't think the risk of stumbling into this position against a lower rated player who really, really hopes you force a draw here is very high. Capablanca is saying, your moves don't make sense, Jan. Yeah, I do my best, but sometimes I am very wrong too, so let me know. Capablanca is saying DC4 looks more correct. I think BC4 was played in Stockfish vs Alpha Zero. So don't tell me, tell Stockfish. There's also mention of short castles instead of knight f4 as a way to mix it up. Yeah, this is a line I'm aware of. It has been played a couple times. I also thought it was very interesting. Rook e1, f5, knight e5, queen f6, knight f3, g5. I like the look of it because it feels very Marshall-esque. You know, giving a central pawn, throwing these pawns down the board, and Isa Vulpes has continued to analyze this in great detail. I don't really have that much to add. Your analysis is correct. So, yeah, after g3, g4 didn't really seem to work, but f4 does work. And there was this endgame sort of by force. How do we get there again? Takes, bishop g4, bishop g5, queen f3, bishop f3, which I think has been played in a few games. No? So, what do we have to say? Yeah, there's some talk about g4, knight h4, f4, yeah, which I agree, it doesn't seem to work. Okay, my opponents will probably never find this over the board. Yeah, that's the usual decision if you want to bluff it or not. But no, I don't have any improvements in the g4 line. Some helpers on how one would play the piece versus 3 pawns position after f4. Yeah, I think that's roughly an equal endgame. And if I may quote, I'm fine with an equal endgame to outplay someone in. But here's no room. There's room in the other one. So I'm not sure if there's any guidelines for this. This is a very unbalanced position. There were some games that ended in draws. I do think either side could win this. The white 3 pawns are not very far advanced yet, and one of them is doubled. So actually I think I'd choose black if I had to choose. Mainly, don't blunder material, consolidate the, which I think is a material advantage because of the doubled pawns, and take it from there. But it's very much a move by move position. So it's hard to say what guidelines one should give. I'd go bishop d5 and try to go rook a8. But if you want to analyze this more, then one can continue a bit in this position. I think both lines you gave are perfectly fine. Knight f4 is considered to be perfectly fine, and this castle is rook 1 f5 is one of those which I didn't really want out there, to be honest, even though there have been some games, because I also thought it had some surprise value and I might get it in one day. Went after g3 f4. Yeah, I think black is fine, and I'd be going for this. Anyway, thanks for the question. Isa Vulpes, I think you've done so much research. You really don't need to be all that worried about people entering that line. You seem well prepared. Fidemaster Payback is saying, hi, first of all, thanks for the amazing content on Chess24. Thank you, thank you. I've recently started playing the London system. Sorry to hear that. I know you made a video on the black side of it, giving the line d4, knight f6, bishop f4, d5, e3, c5, c3, knight c6, knight d2, e6, knight f3, cd, ed, knight h5. What do you think is white's best chance to play for an advantage, even though the position is roughly equal? Thanks in advance. You're trying to turn me against myself? I have been an outspoken enemy of the London system. I did videos against it, and now you're trying to get me to switch sides? I guess I have to. This is sort of the format of this show. But still, how dare you? So, good old London system. Knight d2, e6, knight f3. Yeah, this I mentioned earlier that I have some sympathy for this line. And I think white's best try is to go all sharp here. Bishop e3, bishop d6, knight e5. Hitting this knight, g6 is the idea. This knight wants to retreat to g7 and then have the option of playing f6. And g4 is interesting. Knight g7, h4. Very sharp, of course. Pawn sacrifice. Not every Londonier's cup of tea, but I do believe this is the best chance. Black has a couple options. We can take the pawn. Takes, knight f3. How does this go? Bishop f6, h5, short castles, hg. There was some game, maybe by queen d2, d4, cd b6, which was also complicated. But I thought hg was more accurate first. fg, queen d2, with a very complicated position. But I did think that white had some chances here. There's also the move h5, which I thought was fine, but it's a bit trickier than I initially thought, if I'm being perfectly frank. They go bishop g5, queen b6 is the main move, bishop f6, and this is a very complicated position, where once again white has some chances for an advantage. After rook g8 or king to f8, I am not sure how happy I am about black's position here. The list continues. There's also f6, knight c6, bc. When people have been playing h5 in practice, but it looks like maybe delaying that and going bishop d3 first is also a decent try for an advantage. So yeah, I think the only way to really ask black questions is to go for this knight e5, g4 thing, if you allow black to consolidate here by playing g3 or one of the slow moves, or bishop d3. He will be pretty okay. Castles, g6, f6, knight to f4, and the a5, how does this go? G6, bishop b5 lines, I will also not very impressed by. We can sacrifice this pawn and have a good position. So 95 g4 is where it's at. Mr. Payback, was it? Yeah, Mr. Payback. Thank you for your question. What else we got? Fryalapan is saying, "Hi Jan, thanks for all your amazing content. I feel like your videos have tremendously improved my chess understanding. I have a question about the King's Indian defense, Fianchetto variation. Lately, black has been doing well in the line d4, knight f6, c4, g6, g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, castles, knight c3, d6, knight f3, knight c6, castles e5, d5, knight b8. So white has preferred exchanging with 8d takes e5. Black seems to be fine. To do fine after d5, bishop g5, bishop e6, queen c1, queen c8. But the position seems rather drawish. Good old problem. White plays the main line. But yeah, things can be drawish. Even in the King's Indian, do you have a way to spice this line up? Or do you have a better suggestion for King's Indian players against the Fianchetto? Maybe one of the bishop f5 lines. Thank you very much. Yeah. I hear you. And I do think you're right. After e5, the fashion has shifted a bit away from d5, knight b8 towards de5, and after de5, bishop g5. Indeed, it's, I guess, equal if black is precise, but it's not exactly fun and there is no real way to spice it up. Same thing about knight e5. de bishop g5, which black should hold, but he will suffer a little bit with very limited chances for a full point. So if you're playing for a win, this knight c6, e5 is not really the way. I don't have a good answer. Personally, I'm always most uncomfortable if black just does this. I think computers don't like this, and probably in computer play it would do fairly terrible after h3. But I've always been uncomfortable here after rook e8 or ed rook e8 or queen b6. So yeah, these positions, they are, if you start analyzing them with a computer, will look very easy for white. Over the board, it's always somewhat unpleasant to play because there's so many tricks. Did my little tool just freeze? That'd be bad news. We're almost done. We're out of sync, and now the tool freezes. But there's only 2 questions left, so I will heroically, hopefully, restart it. Oops, that's my desktop. Good job, Jan. And then answer all your questions. All the remaining questions. By hand. This can only take hours. Here we are. So we were discussing ways to spice it up against the King's Indian Fianchetto variation. Yeah, as mentioned, knight b7, knight c3, e5, e4. c6 is one that I don't think computers like very much, but I think is very hard to play over the board. Another line I have some sympathy for, once again, as a way to spice it up, is c6, followed by bishop to f5, which not necessarily a great line maybe, but it leads to weird positions, and it's not so easy to play. The main move is knight to e1, preparing e4, then black goes bishop e6, if white goes d5, things get very, very tricky. I think you take in bishop d7, or bishop d7 immediately. And if they go b3, then black plays d5 himself. Once again, things get a little out of hand. I recently played knight g5 myself here, but I wasn't too convinced this was such a great move either. So I do have some sympathy for the c6 bishop f5. Of course, white has ways to play solidly here as well. b3, knight e4, bishop b2. And you're not going to be better, but there is quite some play left in the position. So yeah, this is, I guess, my favorite bishop f5 system. There's also knight c6 followed by bishop f5. Well, once again, I kind of like white's knight e1, whatever they do here, queen c8, e4, bishop h3, knight c2. I think this is somewhat more pleasant for white. So yeah, subjectively, the line I'm most uncomfortable with as white is this knight b7, e5 business. Objectively, I think your knight c6, e5 is a good line. And this c6, knight c3, bishop f5. I'm not so sure it's a great line, but I think it makes it somewhat tricky to play. There we are. Then, last question by Mr. Reich. He's saying, "Hi Jan, in your Nimzo series, you've described convincingly why you dislike 7 knight c6 for black in the Rubinstein main line with bishop d3, knight f3. Is there any specific reason for disregarding the Parma variation?" I never know what anything is called, so the Parma variation, what is that? d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, e3 castles, bishop d3, d5, knight f3, c5 castles, dc, bishop c4, knight bd7. After all, Sokolov describes it as a try to get a favorable version of the line cd-ed, since black has not yet captured on d4, and white's bishop cannot develop to g5 yet. And besides, it seems to be played more than h-cd, the line you, and by the way, Royce as well, recommend. Thanks, Reich. Yeah, I think that's a decent line. I still think the line I recommended somewhat more reliable if you do a repertoire. You, or I at least in my black repertoires, I normally try to give what I consider the most reliable line so that people don't have to update all the time. And I think your point about it being more popular than CD is slightly unfair, because we could obviously reach this position if we played the much more popular 7 CD followed by DC, while people that start with DC more often than not will not follow it up with CD. So the CD DC line is still more popular, I would argue, than the knight bd7 line. Anyway, knight bd7 I think is a decent move. Yeah, it's the type of move I would probably dabble in when trying to play for a win or to surprise somebody who I feel is ready for my usual stuff with CD, ED, B6. I don't really know what to do after Queen E2, to be perfectly frank. There are these lines with b6 that usually runs into d5. Maybe black survives this, but once again, that means black has to make a bunch of very accurate moves to maybe hold something. So these b6 lines I don't like. I've noticed that recently some strong players have started playing cdd, knight b6. Maybe that's the line I should have a look at. Bishop b3, bishop d7. Now the bishop gets out again, but it's sort of a weird position. Which one could look at? I think another popular move after queen e2 is a6, when I wasn't too sure if white goes a3, bishop a5, and bishop d3, what to do. After b5, which is the idea of a6, there's always this little tactic with b4, which I didn't like for black. So I do think knight b7 is a playable move. I still believe that cd, ed, b6 is the most reliable path in this position. But knight b7, yeah, does strike me as a very serious option. The point is, as usual, after a3, bishop a5, dc, that now we take, once white is committed to dc, and double the pawns. So in order to confuse people a bit, I think it's serious. Objectively, I would not know how to quote-unquote equalize after queen e2, but we can get a complex game there. So I'm not against knight b7. It's one of those, yeah, sort of add-on lines I would have when I don't feel like playing my main repertoire, which I think will stay this. So, thank you for your question, Reich. This is it. I, once again, have to apologize for many things today. First of all, for my answers coming so late. Secondly, for the audio video being out of sync in the live show. I hope we can get this fixed. But yeah, thanks to the 318 people that pointed out to me that the audio video is out of sync. But you know, life is sometimes tough. Well, at least for Tech Jan, it's sometimes tough. I hope you could still learn something from this. I, as usual, learned something, and that's one big reason for me to do these shows, even though where I do them very sporadically. There's always a lot of interesting questions and angles and theory stuff that I haven't thought about. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sending in questions. We'll keep you posted when the next one is coming. If you're watching this live or before Sunday the 23rd, I should let you know that on Sunday the 23rd, 4 p.m. German time or Norwegian time, there is a Banter Blitz with world champion Magnus Carlsen. All Chess24 premium members can challenge him. Therefore, I don't think I have to plug it much. I would recommend that you keep Sunday 4 p.m. on your calendar. The world champion is back to play some Banter Blitz. Thank you guys, and I'll see you the next time. Bye. Oh, I should plug my own Banter Blitz. It's today, 6:30. I'll try to be in sync. Bye.